Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice 6-game Major League Baseball slate. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Really do apologize for not making videos much this weekend. I have had COVID, so it's been kind of rough. Not the worst thing I've ever had, but definitely not fun. So, uh, still feeling pretty rough, but I can at least talk now. I just couldn't, very bad sore throat the last 2 days. Anyhow, let's go ahead and get into the slate. So, we have a very strange small slate for this Monday slate, and we have a game in Colorado between Colorado and Miami. That's definitely an interesting situation. Obviously, those two teams are going to project well being in Colorado, but that's definitely a risky slate situation there. So let's look at our bats or our pitchers first here. So really, the top four pitchers and over Miller, Fried, and Peapot are the top four guys. Miller, then Peapot, then over, then Fried. Um, I think those are the best case scenario for top tier options. The thing is that they're none of them look particularly great, as most of their K rates for today are around 5.5 strikeouts. So that's not like a ton, and it doesn't make me like, oh man, got to use that guy. So I do like Miller the best, as he's got the most favorable situation and matchup, and he's the better of the pitchers in that slate in that game. But I do think that Fried and Ober have a little bit tougher situations against tougher teams than Miller and Peapot do. So that's kind of the way I look at that right now. So right now I'm ranking the Miller, Peapot, Ober, and then Fried. But you could interchange any of those. Most of the other pitchers on the slate are going to be very high risk, if you should even consider using like Barrios, Gibson, Vasquez, or whoever starts for Boston. Because while it says Criswell on DraftKings, it might be Nick Pivetta. And if that's the case, then he would be somewhat interesting, but he'd be more expensive. So those guys are pretty much best plays. And then I do have a Hail Mary play being Madden for Detroit. Now this is likely going to be his first start. And now he's done good at strikeouts in the minors, and he's getting a very favorable matchup against the White Sox. Luis Robert is probably the only guy that's got a lot of home run potential against him. So I do think that he is a very viable Hail Mary play, being $4,000. And he's probably going to have a decent leash for Detroit as well. So you should be able to play some innings here. So that definitely makes that interesting. With that said, uh, like I said, Miller probably my favorite from that perspective. So let's look at our catchers here. So these position players today going to be somewhat interesting. We do have a game in Colorado, like I said, with Miami and Colorado. So those players are going to be artificially boosted for this matchup. Now, I will note that some of the players from that game are extremely expensive as a result of that matchup situation. So do keep that in mind, because while maybe somebody that's on Miami like Jake Berger, who looks solid as a hitter, his price is significantly more expensive today. So just keep that in mind for that particular game, because that will definitely upset the apple cart for this slate. Connor Wong is the top overall play at the catcher position, especially if you're going to avoid that Colorado game, which is sometimes a good strategy because, especially when it's Miami and Colorado playing. But for Boston, he's been hitting the ball decently well this season. He's really been good. Excuse me, over the last few games, he got a home run in the last 10. He's not a huge home run hitter, but he's got good hitting metrics today, and he's probably one of the safest plays at this position for his price point. I also like Sean Murphy, though he's in a higher risk situation here, because I do like Ober okay as a hitter, as a pitcher, but Atlanta does project decently well here, and Atlanta has been decent lately. So I do think he has some potential, but he's really struggled this season. If There's definitely a possibility that d'Arnaud could end up playing here, but I still think it's going to be Murphy. And if d'Arnaud was to start, he would also be in consideration there. Also, Nick Fortes for Miami. His metrics today are actually somewhat decent. He's kind of a boomer bust play, though, so to keep that in mind. But he's dirt cheap, unlike some of the players on Miami. Looking at the ownership here, Alejandro Kirk, who's had a pretty good week uh, for Toronto, but we have to wait and see about who actually starts there. But he's had a pretty good few games this week, so he's definitely somebody that I have to be considerable on this one, and there'll be some ownership because of that. Sean Murphy also has high ownership. The low-owned upside guys will be Nick Fortes and Connor Wong. I do think this is a place where you can go contrarian as opposed to being with the ownership here to set yourself differently with Connor. So looking at first base, we'll start with Jake Berger. Now, he's very expensive today at $5,600. Not that he hadn't been over $5,000 for a while, but he's gone up even more because this game being in Colorado. Obviously, he does have a lot of home run upside, but his hitting metrics are not as good as the matchup situation and things like that suggest. So I think he is a decent play, but for his price point, he's got to have a home run. And while he's definitely capable of that, it definitely doesn't. I think the matchup situation is not as good as I'd like it to be to utilize him. Kind of the same goes though for Matt Olson, though his matchup metrics are better. Ober is a little bit of risk here, so he's definitely a possibility, and he's been hitting the ball decently well lately. Vlade Jr. is about the same price as well. He can also be fit in here, and depending on who the pitcher is for Toronto, if it's Chris Well, I definitely like him a lot. But I do like a nice value play here as well, and that's going to be Luis Arias for San Diego. Now, he's not going to smash your home run likely, even though he's had a couple recently, actually. I do think he's got some good hitting metrics today, and he's definitely one of the better hitters in baseball right now, so he's definitely worth a look. As for the ownership here, Luis Arias will be the top owned guy, followed by Berger, Vlade Jr., and Jake Cronenworth. Tristan Casas is also a kind of contrarian play that you could utilize. Matt Olson will be one of the low owned upside guys on the slate as well. Looking at second base, we do like Otto Lopez for Miami. He's priced still pretty fairly, even though he's come up $600 or $700 at this position. But he can also, he's cheap enough and he's got good hitting metrics for this game. He's not been a great hitter, but he's been hitting the ball decently well the last few games. So he's definitely worth a look today, especially against a weak pitcher. I do like Brendan Donovan a little bit better just because he's a little safer, but as he's been pretty good lately as well. But he definitely has some good matchup metrics here against San Diego, so he's definitely worth a look here. And he's had some big games lately. Even though he's not a huge home run hitter, he does have good hitting metrics. David Hamilton is also an interesting play today, though he's overpriced as well for Boston. But I do think he has some good metrics for this game, but his price point is not ideal. The ownership here, Connor Norby, Colt Keith, Brendan Donovan, and Xander Bogaerts, that definitely makes me like Brendan Donovan more, especially for a chalky play. He was very close to being a core play. There's just too many good options at second base when it comes to the value, so it's not great. Looking at some of the value plays, though, Brooks Baldwin, Will Wagner, and Connor Norby, they're all dirt cheap, and they definitely have that potential today. So it's definitely a position you can pay down a lot if you want to pay up at other positions. But the way that the pitching is and all that, you can actually get some expensive guys in your lineup. So second base is not the place I would put those guys. I'm definitely going to be looking at third base though starting with Rafael Devers, Vlade Jr., and Jake Berger. All three of those guys, and of course two of them you could fit at first base as well. But Devers does look extremely good today. He's got really good home run upside. He did hit a home run the last game out. But I look at him and he's been hitting. He does tend to be streaky when it comes to home runs, and as long as he's seeing the ball well, he typically has that opportunity. So he looks pretty good today. I also like Berger and Vlade Jr. here, but another guy to consider, Ryan McMahon for Colorado. If you want to get some Colorado bats, which is definitely a doable thing today because they have a pretty good matchup here against Miami. He's been good against Miami this season. He's obviously been a lot better at home than on the road this season. And he does have good hitting metrics for this game, so he's definitely worth a look. Connor Norby, Jake Berger, Vlade Jr., Rafael Devers, and Manny Machado be the top ownership. And then a low-owned upside guy, Ernie Clement, kind of sneaky there. Excuse me. Look at shortstop. Let's see. We do like a couple guys here. Ezekiel Tovar. I mean, he does look like the best play at this position. And I do think he's one of the better options from Colorado for this game, though he has struggled against Miami this season. He's actually been about the same on the road or at home. His batting average a little bit better at home, as we can see. But he's actually hit the ball better when it comes to home runs on the road, which is kind of surprising. But I do think he's a viable option pretty much every game out. So he's one of the better hitters on their team right now, and he's definitely worth a look. He'll also be pretty high owned on the slate. David Hamilton will be able to own the upside guy, which is a little bit higher to roster here. But we also have some value at this position, so you don't have to pay up here either. The ownership would be Mason Wynn, Ezekiel Tovar, and Nicky Lopez. Not sure that I really care about Nicky Lopez today, but Mason Wynn is interesting for St. Louis. So St. Louis does have some good upside on the slate. Uh, but Trey Sweeney, Brooks Baldwin, and Mason McCoy are all under $2,600, and you can definitely just fit any of those guys in. I really do like Trey Sweeney decently today. Um, for Detroit, he's been pretty good, pretty tough so far though, as he's had two good games in his first one, two, what, five starts. So he's definitely capable of scoring enough fantasy points to pay off here, and he has been, I don't think that he's a high risk situation there at all, because I do like Detroit quite a bit today as one of the better non Colorado Miami teams on this slate. Looking at outfielders, this position is pretty decent, though it's not super deep. Um, so Jaron Duran is probably my favorite expensive play from Boston here for this outfield position. He's been pretty good lately, though he's had a couple rough games. He does have that nice home run potential, but he can score good without the home run too, and he's definitely going to need to score at least 15 or so fantasy points at this price point. So he is somewhat hard to roster, especially, but there's plenty of other good options. Like Kerry Carpenter's one. He has very good home run metrics today. I really do like his upside. He's definitely a guy that I think is going to hit a home run. So he's definitely somebody that I would try to roster here. Michael Harris also has good hitting metrics today. If he is in the lineup, he is day to day, so to keep that in mind. He did get hit in the hand yesterday, which is annoying. But it seemed like his from what I saw, he was he avoided the bad injury at least, as he had a scan last night, so he should be okay. He may get held out for one game or two, but we'll have to see. If he's in the starting lineup today, he's definitely got good hitting metrics on this one. Wilyer Abreu for Boston, also very interesting today. He's got good home run metrics as well, even though he's not a huge home run guy. The home run metric does pop today for him, so he's definitely worth a look. He was very close to me at core play as well. Riley Green, also somebody that I think has a lot of potential today. I do like Detroit as a team today, as a stackable team, and he's got some good home run potential, as well as good hitting metrics today. He's been hitting the ball very well lately as well. His price point's a little high, but we can definitely utilize him on the slate. Contrarian plays at this position: Luis Robert Jr., Dalton Varsho, Lars Nootbaar, Britton Doyle, Nolan Jones, Marcelo Ozuna, Griffin Conning from Miami. He's $2,000. Those guys all have some potential. The ownership, we're going to be looking at Jesus Sanchez, Parker Meadows, Matt Brierling, Riley Green, Jackson Merrill, Luis Robert, Jerkerson Profar, Brendan Donovan, Kerry Carpenter, and Charlie Blackmon. Michael Harris, Jaron Duran, Marcelo Ozuna, Tyler O'Neill got to be your low-owned upside guys, along with Willie Abreu. And so overall, I think this slate is going to be pretty good. I think the pitching is going to be a little bit risky today because I don't think anybody's going to score a monster score, but I do think it's a pretty good one. So thank you guys for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Again, sorry that I have